but he isn't necessarily the person making those final decisions. He's trusting that to another level of purchaser. Technical buyer is the role that is taken when someone needs to make sure that basics of technology are covered. In this case, you've primarily got an economic buyer, which is Jane, and a user buyer, which is Jim, and there really is no technical buyer in this case. Your coach is also Jane because she's leading, she's the cheerleader, she's advocating for your product. And then the ratifier could either be Jane or Jim, and you would find this out through further discussion. Perhaps Jim makes that final decision because he is the one who's aware of the balance of scope of challenges regarding finances that the family is in. The ratifier may be a co-decision making process between the two of them, or Jane may handle the final decision herself. But each stakeholder is going to have a different agenda and different questions that you'll need to make sure that you answer. From the economic buyer point of view, they want to make sure that the decisions that are made are fiscally sound. A user buyer would be looking more at convenience. The next step in the process is to determine the objectives. And there's a variety of steps depending upon the individual process. Let's look at the steps. Insight. Does your buyer know what they need? Do they know they even have a problem? Do you need to educate them so that they are aware that there's a difficulty? That's the first step. In the case of Jim and Jane, they weren't really aware necessarily that they had a huge problem until you allowed them time to think about the frustrations and to paint a picture of their current situation. That gave them insight. So that put them at this first step, at insight. Then you're ready to work with them and move to the next level into planning. So once you've established the problem, you're working together to determine what a solution would look like. What would a plan look like? Once you've determined what the plan would look like, then you're ready to move into implementation. Each step requires specific sales goals and sales skills. With insight, you're building the aha moments for a customer. You're helping them realize why they need your product. Planning, you're helping them realize that you are the company to help them find the solution for the difficulty. Then the hardest part can be implementation, because you have to sell them on the plan and sell them on the fact that you are the company to implement that solution that you've agreed upon. Not all projects require insight, planning, and implementation. It depends on the situation. For example, we're working in the project management class right now with a company called Roadwork Ahead. They are aware that they had a problem and they knew what the problem was, so they already came to us with insight. What the students are doing is they are working with them to determine a plan. That's the end of our scope, is we're helping them to determine what they can do internally to address the issues that are being presented. Another company might already know what the problem is. They might already know how to address the problem. Or it can be on an individual level. For example, I know that I have an area in my yard that I want to have redesigned. I know it needs to happen, so I have the insight. I know what I want. I want a sprinkler head installed, I want lilac trees installed, and I want a water feature installed. So my planning is already in place. What I want is I want to hire someone for implementation. So I just want someone to put the pieces in place. And then finally, sometimes you just need the insight so that at a later date you can move on to future steps. Now, depending upon what goals or what objectives you have for a project will depend on where you're going with your proposal. When working with Jim and Jane, we would talk about what the difficulties they're having are, how to go about reaching goals, and what it takes to reach those goals. Now, if in the Road Work Ahead project we were to jump from talking to them about how they could address their problems and say, we're going to help you put this into place, that would be overstepping our bounds. And it would most likely put them off and make them angry. So it's important to realize where you fit in that process so that you and your customer work together through the objective steps. The next step is to schedule a follow-up visit. You're going to clarify critical components. If possible, you'll discuss any competition and address issues related to experience or availability of product, completion timelines. Your goal isn't to badmouth the competition. Your goal is to be able to point out what you can do better, stronger, faster. You're also going to explore and address any stop signs that the customer raises, those flags. Well, I can't afford to do it right now. Well, we do have 3-year financing, so we could do $300 up front and $30 a month thereafter till it's paid or whatever. Well, I really don't want to do it right now because it's going to drag into the holidays. We can have this entire project cleaned up in under a week, and we'll have everything organized, beautiful, and by the time your guests get here for the holiday, they'll be seeing the finished product. Won't that be beautiful? Can you imagine how lovely the lilac trees are going to be when they're in bloom, and that water feature you can hear trickling in the background? So your goal is to continue painting pictures and give them ways to get around stop signs and red flags that they have. Throughout all of your discussions with your client, you want to look for themes. What has the client repeatedly shared with you? I want business clothes separated from play clothes. I want my shoes up off the ground. I want modularized drawers so that I can move my sweaters to the bottom during summer and move them to the top during winter. Each one of the pieces that they share that they have felt are critical enough to bring up repeatedly, you want to address in your proposal. So looking at your sales proposal, you're formatting it just like any letter. You want to keep it to one page. You want to use your company letterhead, 11-point type, Arial times Roman, something easy to read, 1-inch margins, single spacing. At the end, you'll